Always a good time.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to meet you, and I would love to begin our conversation with we're coming up on the 4 year anniversary of this pandemic. How did you survive that time period, and how did it change you?
Oh, wow. Whew, that's a hard-hitting question
He,
straight out of the gate.
yeah, hit the ground running.
Um, I think I still question whether I survived it or not. I mean, obviously I did from a physical standpoint.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I think I'm still recovering. In terms of business, our business fell apart. I'm a professional speaker, so I talk to groups for a living. And that was the one thing that could not happen.
Yeah.
So overnight, I lost about $150,000 in bookings and had to really evaluate my entire business and our structure because we had never had to diversify. We had never had to do anything else. And so, really just spent most of 2020 and 2021 worrying about how I was going to pay my employees and how we were going to get through it. We found ways, right? We found webinars, something I had always hated doing and said to my team, I'm never going to do webinars. They're not engaging. I don't like them. Now I'm the webinar queen. I do webinars every single week.
Yeah.
And I love them. So that changed for me. It brought about a love for webinars. We also created an online course during that time because, hey, that was something that we could sell. And I'm really proud of that. And we currently have about 75 people going through it right now. And so I think it changed me for sure. I think that the changes from a business side, I think the changes were for the better. I think for the personal side, the changes were really trying to get in touch with what really mattered.
Yeah.
Because I kind of I've been in business. Well, now I've been in business. This will be year 10 at the end of this year. But at that point, right, I've been in business like 7 years and I really have made my life work. That's all I had in it, right? I had my husband, but we worked together. So it was work all the time. And we really found in 2020 the need for us to have something in our lives that wasn't work. Because when work was gone, we realized we didn't have a lot. So we found some new hobbies and new interests, and that was cool. And so yeah, so I'm still recovering. I don't think I'm 100% over it yet. It's still kind
Yeah.
of a trigger word when you say it. But I think the changes we made were for the better. And I think give it another 2, 3 years, I'll be able to really say it was the best thing for us.
Yeah, I think we're probably all still in a little bit of PTSD. I don't know when that
Yeah.
goes away, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
especially when I see March on the calendar now, it's just like all the
Yeah, it
alarms
kind of
start
hits you
flashing.
a little
Yeah,
hard in the chest.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
for
I
sure.
think for a lot of us who lived through 9/11 when that happened, right? There's this moment that you feel something on that date every year, and
Yeah,
as the years go by, it's gotten less maybe for some or not as dramatic. But that doesn't mean you don't still feel it.
yeah,
The day you remember that day, you remember where you were, you remember what you heard and what you saw. And so I think this experience of the pandemic as a global society is a marker in time. It's a marker
yeah.
in history, just like a war or anything else would be, that we'll be able to every year on that date, you kind of remember where
Yeah.
you were, what you were feeling.
Absolutely. So let's get to the heart and soul. There's a lot of things, a lot of titles that you hold, but let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the
Okay.
kids curiously says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I teach people how to talk to each other and make friends.
So what did you want to be when you were in that in the third grade?
In the third grade, I was probably in my teacher era at that time in my life. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always been a teacher. No matter what job I held, there was always a teaching component of it, even if that wasn't the job. Even in corporate environments, I was always given the people to train, right? We have a new employee. Oh, send them to Stevie. She'll train them.
Yeah.
So I think that's my gift, right? Is the ability to teach and break things down. And so I think I've always been doing that in some way, shape, or form. But definitely when I was younger, that's what I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
So that kind of turned out okay, I guess.
So let me ask you this. How did this happen? Take me back to where you were born and raised, and how did these seeds of wanting to help people and be a communicator and get to the heart and soul of it, how did that happen for you?
Yeah. So I was born, I think it all starts with I was born to two entertainers. My parents are musicians. They were in a band together, and then mommy had me. I was raised to be on stage. That is something that like other people are scared of public speaking. I feel more comfortable public speaking than doing what you and I are doing right now. Like I'm more comfortable on a stage in a spotlight than in one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
And I've been like that my whole life. And so really, while I always wanted to teach, I think when I was younger, the teaching part was to get on stage and be in front of people because that's what I was pulled towards. So it really wasn't until my 20s when I realized that being on stage in front of people is great, but if you ever want to have a relationship in life, you probably need to learn how to do this one-on-one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sucked at it. I was terrible at building relationships with people on an individual personal level. And so that really was brought to a head through a series of different life events in my 20s, which really made me then investigate, how do I get better at this? How do I learn this? And so everything I teach now, I teach it because I had to learn how to do it and I was hard-headed and stubborn. None of the things I teach now are things that just came naturally. They are all things I struggled with. And I think that's why it's so important to me to teach it to other people because I know the struggle. I know what it feels like to feel like you're not connecting with people or you're not able to build these sustainable relationships. And why not? What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, it's really a combination of being aware of yourself and what you're saying and what people are perceiving of you. And then it's being able to really think before you speak and think about the other person and what they need to hear in that moment. And if you can do those two things, you really can build successful relationships. And I've done that in the last 20 years of my life. But the first 20 years, like people talk about having childhood friends and friends since high school, I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
I didn't start making long-term friends till I was in my mid 20s because I didn't know how.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really where that shifted for me.
So for the layperson out there that may not understand how this works, you're an emotional intelligence expert. How does that work? How do people's emotional intelligence get, how does it get calculated and how does it help them interact with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of different assessments out there you can do to see if you have high emotional intelligence. I always say to people, if you have a lot of really deep relationships, you probably have really high emotional intelligence because that's what it allows us to do. It allows us to connect with people on different levels. And so if you're able to connect with people deeply, you probably have it. If everything in your life is very surface level and you don't really have deep connections, then you probably need more of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the easy, like personal, just take a look at yourself and see where you are with it
Yeah.
rather than taking a big assessment online or something like that. In terms of how I feel it helps people or why people need it, it really is about, for me, emotional intelligence is twofold: managing emotions so that I don't say the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong way. And then also interpreting what you're saying or what another human is saying without putting emotions on top of it, which is what we tend to do in life,
Yeah.
right? Like you say, no, I don't really want to do that today. And I hear, oh my gosh, he hates me. That's not the same thing. That's my emotions on top of what you said instead of just hearing what you said. And so, learning how to have emotional intelligence is learning how to truly listen to people's words without adding emotion on top of it that isn't there, so that we can truly communicate on a at a better level than what a lot of us do on a daily basis.
Think sometimes life moves too fast. Like I know that whenever I edit interviews and I re-listen to what we were talking about, it hits me in a different way. It's like that's
Yeah.
the reason why I love the slow motion function on the camera. Sometimes it all goes by so fast, but when
Yeah.
you pull it down to a slower frame, it's
Right.
just like, wow, that's pretty magnanimous. It just makes it that much better, which is probably the idea of listening, because you do stop, you slow down, and you
Mhm.
allow the other person to have the floor to explain what they want to do.
Absolutely. And I think we're very much in an what I call the interruptus period of our society, right? Which is we are trained to interrupt each other. I'm not going to remember my thought at the end of your conversation. So I'm just gonna spit it out now because it's important and I want to make sure I'm heard. Right. We've kind of gone to this place of losing some of that in a lot of ways, etiquette and respect of conversation where somebody would finish talking before the next person would speak.
Hmm.
And we've lost a lot of that in our society. And that's because it's moving so fast, to your point, right? Things are moving so fast that even our conversations, we're trying to move them along faster as opposed to actually enjoying time talking to another human.
Yeah,
Right? It
yeah,
used to be you used to go over to somebody's house and you didn't watch TV, you didn't watch movies, you sat and talked, you conversed. Having discourse was the events activity.
yeah,
And we don't do that anymore, right? Everything is everything else. And so we tend to have these really fast conversations where we interrupt people. And I think to your point, that does make us miss things, right? Because if I'm interrupting you to get my own point across, what did I miss you were just saying? Because I was planning to say my own thing rather than listening to what you were saying in that moment.
yeah.
And so I think that's an ongoing struggle that we all have. And what I have learned is in slowing it down, being 100% present and listening to the person, a lot of times the thing I was going to interrupt and say, they already said,
Yeah,
right? And if I
yeah.
had just let them finish it out, it would have been said. And then I could have added to the conversation instead of just finishing their sentence.
So, who's your favorite conversationalist of anybody out there, that whether they're famous or otherwise, who do you see being one of the more engaging people out there in the world?
Oh, that's really, really good question. I think right now I would say that one of the people that I always tune in when they deliver something or do something is probably in the likes of Brene Brown, Oprah, right? Like these
Yeah,
people who have honed the skill, Mel Robbins, honed the skill of truly sitting back listening and then adding to the conversation instead of just repeating something or just making sure their own voice was heard. Um, I think one of the people that I enjoy from like a podcast space that I think does it well is Lewis Howes, who I'm not always a fan of personally, but from a podcast interview standpoint, he's really good at being quiet. And that takes effort for all of us to be quiet in a space and let somebody else talk. So I think that's really interesting. On stage, some of the best engaged speakers are pastors and preachers. Using emotion to connect with people is something they do as part of their work.
yeah.
So if you ever want to see how to connect to an audience, analyze that because that's connection. But that's more from that public speaking standpoint and not necessarily a one-on-one conversation.
So, who's been a hero for you in your life?
Oh, well, gosh, there's many. I mean, I'll go with the easy one that everybody probably knows and says at some point in their lives, but I would say my mother.
Yeah,
I mean, I think everybody has somebody in their life who is like that to them. But my mom, man, she was an entertainer when she had me, right? They sang Fleetwood Mac songs, which is how I got my name. Um,
I
and
was
then,
wondering.
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, she went to fashion design school because that's what you do.
Yeah,
And then she ended up doing computer security and analysis for hospitals, and that was her career.
wow.
So, like all these different things. And she was just always somebody who, if she was passionate about something, if she wanted to try it, she was just going to do it. And it didn't matter what society said. And it didn't matter if that's what women did or what moms were supposed to do or any of that. She was just going to do it until she wasn't interested anymore. And then she was going to go find something else. And she's just always been that way. And I think that that to me is inspiring because I'm a person who oftentimes really cares what society thinks. And if something's going to be appropriate, and it's always my mother reminding me to, well, be the shark, which
Yeah.
is what she says. That's her phrase. It's always her reminding me to just be the shark, own your ocean, and who cares? So I that gives her hero status in my brain.
So what would be a dream interview for you? What would be a dream conversation? If you could meet one person, sit down with them and converse and or see him in a speech mode, who would that be?
Mm. I think I would love to see, um, ooh, it's a tough one. I think I would love to see live. I would love to be in a space with Brene Brown. I would love to see how she creates the environment of what she creates in a room, because I know she does it, but I'd like to see how she does it, because that would be interesting to me, because so much of what she talks about is emotional related. So that kind of, I geek out on that. So I
Yeah.
would love to see that. In terms of somebody I would love to talk to, um, I have always just admired the way Tony Robbins created this whole empire of changing people's lives and getting people to pay him a whole lot of money to do so. And I'm just intrigued.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by how he started. I've read his story, I've attended his things, like, but just to actually sit down in a one-on-one interview and ask some of those questions about how he does it, how he keeps doing it, how he gets the energy for it. I'm just really interested by that, because he does a lot and he puts out a lot of energy, and I get tired after a 2-day event. I don't know how he does 5.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
I would be interested. I would be intrigued in that conversation.
I think there's going to have to be a documentary that's going to come out because I'm still amazed. I come from the era where he was on infomercials as a kid. You just
Yeah.
thought it was this fleeting thing. And
Yeah.
he's been consistent all of these years. He's one of the few people that cancel culture hasn't gotten near. It's like he's just like the sparkling example of staying on the pulpit and doing it
Yeah.
and getting better all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, becoming a father in his what, 60s,
Yeah.
and just, I mean, living a life of health and energy at an age that most of us would be slowing down. And I feel like he's speeding up. And I just want to know how he does that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah,
Like,
I
how do you
get
do
it.
that? I'm exhausted.
Yeah, right. Even thinking about it. So let me ask you this. We're talking about Tony Robbins being highly motivated and helping people. You're in a profession of helping people, and you also have to evolve as a human being yourself. What
Mhm.
is the motivator for you every day to get up out of bed, to do the work, to evolve as a human? What is that motivation for you?
Yeah, I think for me, my purpose in life is to make sure nobody feels invisible. That's my purpose. I've said that for years. And so I try to find ways every day to make sure I make somebody feel seen, right? Like that somebody that day is going to feel seen because I made sure that happened. And I think that does kind of inspire me to get out of bed and do the work, because even when I'm tired and even when I'm stressed out or overwhelmed, I always come back to, what if I'm the only person who makes that person feel seen today? I should probably show up, right? It would
Yeah,
be easy enough to cancel. It would be easy enough to be like, I'm not feeling it today. How do I still show up for other people, not for myself? And that's what I've had to do. I think I spent a lot of my time being selfish. Younger years, me was very selfish, kind of living for my own life and whatever I wanted. I feel like now I'm kind of in this span of time where it's all about everybody else, right?
yeah,
How do I show up for other people? How do I make sure they feel seen, they have a good day, they have a good experience? And in order to do that, I have to show up as best as I can. And that promotes me getting up and getting it done. But I will say, recently, and this is kind of terribly morbid, but um, I'm somebody who, growing up, I didn't have a lot of death. There wasn't a lot of death around me. I didn't go to funerals. That just wasn't in my life. In the last 3 years, I've lost a lot of people. And every time we lose somebody else, I go back to that thought of, you do not know how many days you have. So do you really want to spend one of them doing nothing to contribute? right? Or
Yeah.
would you rather contribute something? Even if the only energy I have is to send a text to a friend to say, hey, thinking about you today. That still is more important than just doing nothing. Because
Yeah.
what if that's the last day I have? Then at least I did something with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's been one of your favorite client success stories? A real turnaround, something that always puts a smile on your face.
Oh, yeah. So I have a client that I worked with at the police department. And I went in and I taught a lot about de-escalating situations and using emotional intelligence and this kind of work. And he was somebody who he came in every day, arms crossed. I don't want to listen to what you have to say. This doesn't apply to me as a police officer, just absolutely not wanting to be a part of my program. Right now, he was friendly to me personally, like at break time, we would make jokes and things like that. But in the training, totally disengaged. And I really thought he was going to leave the program going, none of this had any impact on me. None of this was a thing. And I got a call about 3 months later that he was getting promoted. And he asked if I would come to his ceremony. And I was like, sure. I mean, I thought that was odd, but I was also like, hey, you think that highly of me? Sure. I'll come. I'll do that. And he wanted me there because he had a victim coming in to kind of give a statement about how he had supported her in a domestic violence thing. And so we heard this story and everybody's crying. And he comes up to me afterwards and he says, hey, I just want you to know I could have never handled that situation without your class.
Wow.
And that to me, he got something out of it.
Yeah.
She got something out of it. And
Absolutely. No,
that's
that's
where
what we're here to do for sure. So let me ask you this: of all of the things that you've done and overcome and become and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
ooh. I would say right now I am the proudest of our theater company. So in 2020, when my husband and I were trying to figure out something that we would enjoy, we got sucked into live theater, even though it wasn't live then, it was all online. But
Yeah.
we got sucked into it and we enjoyed it for whatever reason. So when lockdown came out, we started getting involved with live theater in the area and then decided that, well, we're entrepreneurs. So it's not good enough to do it with other people. We need to start our own and make our own thing. And so we started a nonprofit. And so we started it in the end of 2021, was our first show in October. We're now into our third season now in 2024. And it is a self-sustaining community theater. We've got about 500 patrons. We've had over 100 actors on our stage
Wow.
over that time, and we've created a community, a family. They go out on Saturday nights and do karaoke. We're having a big birthday party for one of them this weekend. We support each other in other shows, other places. And I'm proud of that because I think during that time of lockdown and everything being horrifying, to find something good and then to make it better and share it with other people, I'm proud of that. And I'm
Yeah.
proud to say that now, 3 years in, I am no longer financially supporting the organization. It is self-supporting. And that feels amazing to have achieved.
Yeah. So, Stevie, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you. But
Mhm.
you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a hard worker. I think I'm a perfectionist. I think I am overly emotional most days. But I think at the end of the day, I'm a caregiver. I care about other people. I give for other people, and that makes me me.
So you're a best-selling author. There's all these things that go into who you are. If anyone wants to read, want to reach out to hire you, learn more about you, anything about your world, the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, so you can always find information about our company and what we're doing at empathix.net, empathix.net. Or if you just want to connect to me, the easiest way to do that is just look on any social media platform for at Dr. Stevie Don. And I spend way too much time on social media, so I will answer.
So, favorite shark movie ever?
Oh, Jaws, the original.
Of course. Have you been to the set? Can you go to the set?
So actually, that's where my fear of sharks started. Is my parents took me to Universal when I was 4,
Oh, wow.
and I was on the side of the boat where the Jaws came out, and I didn't go in the ocean until I was 26. After
Oh,
that,
oh,
because I
wow.
really was scared of sharks. My love of sharks is actually since the age of 26. I
So it,
finally got over it.
yeah, so it's symbolic of you getting over fears like you were
Yeah.
talking about in your
Oh,
20s.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yes, Jaws is my all time favorite. Yes, I have been to the set. I should probably go back now that it wouldn't be terrifying. It was
Right.
enjoyable.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah. That's wonderful. Stevie, thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care.